So the report came out yesterday that Kemba Walker and the Boston Celtics have kind of mutually decided that they're going to be parting ways this offseason. Now, obviously, that is much easier said than done. As a Celtics fan, the Kemba Walker experiment was something I was very excited about originally when they signed him, obviously fresh off of Kyrie leaving for the Brooklyn Nets. Kyrie didn't obviously work out here. Kemba didn't obviously work out in Boston as well. I'd say they were definitely for different reasons, but ultimately at the end of the day, the Celtics seemingly cannot find a good enough point guard. So today's video, we're going to be diving into 10 trades that I think are definitely possible for Kemba Walker. We're going to be diving into pretty much all these. I'll have some pictures up on the screen for you guys of what I think these potential trades would look like. Some of them have the picks included. Some of them do not, and I'll go ahead and kind of talk about those picks if I do not. So, this is going to be a new series here where we're just going to kind of talk about some NBA things. This is obviously going to be big trial and error. If you guys are new around here, you've never seen one of my videos before. We typically do rebuilds around here. If you want to check out the rest of the video on the channel, feel free to do that. But as always, if you guys are new around here, want to subscribe to the channel, feel free to do that. I'd love to have you here. I'd love to grow this audience. And I do appreciate every individual one of you that's been supporting me so much throughout me expanding my content here. So, as I mentioned earlier, trial and error is going to kind of be the name of the game for this. But I am really excited because I do think we have a lot to talk about with this NBA offseason. I think there's a lot of potential rumors going on, floating around out there. So, that being said, if you guys, have something else you want me to talk about, some other kind of video besides rebuilds you do want me to do, feel free to comment them down below. And if you guys want to, upvote the ones that you do enjoy, I'd be happy to do them, man. So that being said, I don't really know what the background of this video is going to look like. I'm assuming you guys are probably going to see face cam for this first one. If I do a similar type of video to this one in the future and you guys don't want to see face cam, feel free to let me know. I can go ahead and probably take it off, but I do have to play it's kind of a dangerous game. I don't know if I can really use NBA footage. I'm not signed with NBA Playmakers anymore. If you don't know what NBA Playmakers is, it's, a service that kind of lets you, they have rights to NBA footage and they kind of let you use their service for like a profit of your YouTube channel. I was with them for a point in time. I didn't really need them, and I'm not with them anymore. So who knows if the NBA will kind of, go ahead. I'm going to probably put footage in the background of this one. I don't know if the NBA is going to flag it and copyright strike me, but we'll work on that from there. That being said, sorry for the rant right there. We're going to go ahead and dive into 10 potential trades for Kemba Walker this offseason. So this first deal here is going to be kind of the one that so many people have been floating out there. I've seen it all over NBA Twitter as soon as the news broke yesterday that Kemba was looking to go somewhere else this offseason. I think this was kind of the trade that kind of probably came to everybody's mind. Is Kemba Walker for Kristaps Porzingis? Now, this is a lot easier said than done. Neither of these contracts are really kind of working out. If I look at kind of the pros for each of these sides, if you look at, kind of the pros for Boston, you're getting rid of obviously a bad kind of, contract and injury prone player that just seemingly didn't really work out. You take back a guy who has shown a lot of potential at points in time in Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, he obviously has injury issues as well, but, he obviously is a little bit younger. In New York, his time there, he looked like a superstar. He looked like he was going to be kind of one of the dominant big men in this league for a long time. And, so far in Dallas, it hasn't really looked like that. He's not really happy not being kind of a co-star next to Luka Doncic. So I think this would be kind of a win-win. You can see the trade on the screen right now. In my opinion, the Celtics definitely would have to give up at least 2 second-round picks. You probably even throw in a first-round pick if you really wanted to. But I think, player for player value here, obviously both not the greatest contracts in the world. But I think this is pretty fair value if I am being honest. I think Porzingis finds a new home here. I'd be excited to see the kind of the lineups that would go on with the Celtics, whether they run Porzingis at the center, move him down to that power forward spot, and run Robert Williams next to him, or they keep him at that center position and kind of figure out who their power forward is going to be moving forward. So, for the Dallas Mavericks side of this, I think Kemba brings you something, a different aspect, kind of be what he was maybe in Charlotte a little bit more. Obviously, he didn't have any sort of Luka Doncic type of talent next to him, but he can probably be more of a primary ball handler. While in Boston, he did have the ball a lot, but he was typically looking to Brown and Tatum a lot more. Next to Doncic, you can take some of the pressure off him, especially because Doncic does have to be so ball dominant at pretty much every point in time. And if Kemba can stay healthy, and kind of get back to his days in Charlotte, it's not like Kemba had a bad season statistically for the Celtics. He was just injured a lot. And, hopefully he can kind of work on that this offseason. I think he would be a good veteran to especially mentor a guy like Jalen Brunson moving forward. So that is our first trade. Let's get into the next one. So a familiar face to Boston in this next deal right here, Kemba Walker to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Al Horford. The Celtics would also include a first-round pick in this one, and the reason I want to be clear on this one, why I included a first-round pick in this one and not the previous one, is because of the fact that Kristaps Porzingis has been saying that he's not really happy in Dallas anymore. He's kind of looking for a new home. Al Horford probably doesn't want to be in Oklahoma City, but again, he's not exactly requesting out. I don't really think he's that type of player. Along with that, Dallas is not really rebuilding. They're kind of going for a championship right now. Not that they're going to win one with this current core, but they're definitely actually competing. When you look at a team like Oklahoma City, they're definitely, trying to rebuild right now, and they're kind of just acquiring as many assets as possible. So I think they definitely probably get a request a first-round pick out of this one. But this fits an interesting one for me. I was actually one of the people that I loved Al Horford in Boston. I don't love his current contract right now for especially what he gives at the age. I believe he's 34, 35 at this point. I think if they were to do this deal, I think Kemba would definitely, kind of take some of the pressure off SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think Shai can definitely be a little bit better off the ball at times. But I think Kemba and him can definitely run in the backcourt together. And eventually maybe Kemba in the final year of his deal could be a good trade pickup for somebody. So, the Al Horford aspect of this in Boston could come back. I personally don't love Al Horford at the power forward spot. He's obviously a great interior defensive player. At times can be a good, perimeter defensive player as well. Ultimately, I just don't think, especially, with the age of him at this point, he's a little bit older, a little bit slower. I think I'd probably rather have him at that center spot. So, him and Williams would kind of have to figure out that rotation. But, this isn't a great contract as well. 3 years left at $27.5 million. It's not good by any means, but I really do think Al Horford would kind of be happy to be back in Boston. I mean, I believe he loved his time here. I see, his family on Twitter all the time says they love their time here. So I think he'd be welcomed back. I think he can ultimately be a really good leader for this team as well. Kind of getting that veteran mentorship back into this culture. That definitely does need a culture reset. That's definitely for sure. So this is trade number 2. These are probably the 2 most realistic deals. With that being said, let's get into the third one. Third trade right here is Kemba Walker to the LA Clippers for Patrick Beverly, Luke Canard, and Terrance Mann. As you can see on the screen right now, I didn't put it through in the trade finders because I found this, exact article, or excuse me, this exact, piece I kind of clipped from an article. I'll kind of read it to you real quick. I actually kind of agree. This is a really good statement. Getting 3/4 on a depreciated dollar is actually a really good, kind of comparison for that. As far as value, I think this is kind of fair value. I think Patrick Beverly's, he's obviously one of the better defensive guards in the league. At times he doesn't look that way. He obviously is, kind of the guy that pisses everybody off, which I think Boston could definitely use some of from time to time. With Luke Canard, he had a couple of DMPs for the Clippers in the last series they had. I think he can be good. Obviously, provide shooting off the bench. Him and Jason Tatum did go to college together. I think, that'd be a fun reunion for the two. And then Terrance Mann has suddenly flashed in the playoffs, for these past couple of games. Has started to play a little bit. Been really efficient. I think he'd be some good bench depth, if it does come to it. So, for the Clippers side of this, I don't necessarily love this deal for them. It's not a bad deal. And, if you're going to do this, you definitely have to do this trade after Kawhi Leonard resigns. You do not want to do this trade before Kawhi Leonard resigns. That is 100% for sure. Because if you trade for Kemba Walker, you do a deal like this or exactly this, and at any point in time, Kawhi Leonard, packs his bags, goes to the Knicks, goes somewhere else, you are screwed. You are screwed. You don't have your first round picks. And you have Kemba Walker and Paul George and the rest of the funky bunch there. So definitely do this after Kawhi resigns. That being only if he resigns. If he doesn't resign, you definitely don't do any sort of deal like this. But, I also don't love the fit of Kemba playing next to 2 wings. Especially like your 2 best players are wings. And you look at the Boston Celtics, obviously Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, both very established all-star wings. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are not Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They're obviously Kawhi's obviously 100% better than Jason Tatum. I'd probably take Jaylen Brown over Paul George, but it's a similar comparison that your best 2 players are wings. And I think Kemba kind of needs more like 1 co-star next to him than 2, if you know what I'm saying. I just don't think Kemba works that well in a big 3 system. That's just my opinion. I think he dominates the ball just a little bit too much. He's not that good off the ball. On some pick and rolls, he can be decent, especially when he tries to find the big man down low, but I just think he works better with 1 co-star rather than 2. That's just my opinion, but I think this would be a great point guard fit, ultimately if it's all you kind of have. So if the Clippers are going all in, Kawhi Leonard resigns, even if they don't, especially if they don't win a championship this year, I think this would be a great move for them. So this deal personally is really not one of my favorites, especially as a Celtics fan, but, realistically, I don't actually think it's that bad. I was never one to actually enjoy Lonzo and Eric Bledsoe in any sort of backcourt next to each other. I don't think they play well next to each other. In my opinion, they're both like pretty generic point guards. They're obviously both pretty solid defensively. Especially Lonzo. Eric Bledsoe probably more so a few years ago. He's still obviously good defensively, but this is kind of you take back 2 smaller bad contracts. I know it says it right there in the trade description, but. If on the Celtics, you'd have what would your lineup be next year? Think about this realistically. Eric Bledsoe, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and I guess Steven Adams or Robert Williams. This is just a weird one for me. It's not exactly a lateral move, but I don't really think the Celtics should do this. That being said, I do think this is one of the more realistic trades that could happen. I don't think you're getting a ton of value for Kemba Walker no matter what you do, especially if you don't want to give up a ton of draft assets, which again, you don't really have anymore. The days of the Celtics having every first round pick seemingly, or what felt like every first round pick are over. That time has just come to a close. So this is probably one that's more realistic, especially because I think Steven Adams, I don't really think he fits next to Zion, as a center. I think, if I'm the New Orleans Pelicans, I want a center that can stretch the floor a little bit more, can kind of get out on the fast break a little bit better. I mean, Steven Adams is definitely good for double-digit rebounds pretty much every night, I would imagine. I mean, he's probably going to be around 12 and 10 if he ends up on the Celtics. That's just my guess anyways. But, neither Bledsoe or Adams' contract is good. But that being said, you're not getting good deals with good contracts back if you're the Celtics. So, if we look at the New Orleans Pelicans side here, I think Kemba would be great. If they end up losing Lonzo Ball this offseason, I think he'd come in there as another scorer. I mean, obviously Lonzo's not known for his scoring, but I think Kemba would provide some good scoring next to Ingram. Next to Zion Williamson, kind of take some of the pressure off of those two young stars. So, in my opinion, this wouldn't be a bad deal for New Orleans. You obviously still have some young rookie contracts. I think Ingram's into his extension now. Zion will probably be in a couple years, but good veteran mentorship. Nickeil Alexander-Walker's there as well. So this isn't a bad deal for me, especially if the Pelicans do potentially make a push for maybe a 7-8 seed next year in a loaded Western Conference. Solidifying that point guard spot, kind of getting out of the log jam that you're in right now, wouldn't be a bad one for me or for them in my opinion. So we're kind of getting into some of the deals that are a little bit more far-fetched at this point. This one on the screen right now, just hear me out for a second. This one doesn't make a ton of sense to me when I first saw it, but after I sat down and thought about it for a little while, it started to make a little more sense. Christian Wood's obviously coming off a career, I have his stats pulled up right here, of 21 points, 51.5% field goal percentage, 9.5 rebounds, and just under 2 assists. I mean, an absolute career for Christian Wood. He would obviously come in and be that center spot for the Boston Celtics. Definitely could maybe move to that power forward spot if they want to run him and Williams next to each other. Gordon would be a tremendous piece off the bench for them. Honestly, could even slide in that starting role if they move Marcus Smart to that point guard position. But this deal really doesn't make a ton of sense if you're the Houston Rockets, unless you're maybe getting 1, maybe 2 first-round picks in return. You're obviously going full rebuild. I think Christian Wood's going to be on a lot of teams' radars this offseason, especially, if the Rockets, I think John Wall has to go from that team. I don't think he fits there anymore. I feel like that's kind of should be a fact. Not that Kemba is timeline matching up with them. I just think it makes more sense to have somebody like Kemba Walker on that team who, obviously they both have injury problems, but I think he's not a better floor general. I just kind of feel like he's a little bit of a better fit in Houston, if I'm being honest. I think teams are probably going to call you about John Wall. I think he's definitely a better player than Kemba Walker at this point in time. That's, again, just my opinion. But, Christian Wood, you're definitely going to get calls about him this offseason if you're the Houston Rockets. If we're being how old is Christian Wood? 25, 26, 27 years old at this point in time. The Houston Rockets are fully committed to a rebuild after trading James Harden. You're probably not going to be in the prime of Christian Wood's career by the time you start getting competitive again. So if I'm the Houston Rockets, I'm probably moving on from Christian Wood, getting as much assets as I can in return. And Eric Gordon's probably, the timeline just 100% doesn't match for him. So he probably wants to go as well. This isn't bad as well. I don't think this is necessarily that crazy, but again, I don't really think this is one of the more realistic ones. That being said, from this point on out, they kind of only get a little bit, more crazy. So I'll see you guys in the next one. So when I saw this deal in the article, originally I was thinking, if you're the Celtics, you're not really getting tremendous value here, for Kemba Walker. But then I remembered Kemba Walker doesn't really have tremendous value right now. This isn't 2018 Kemba Walker that we're talking about right here. This is 2021 Kemba, who's injured, can't play a ton, and ultimately just could never fit with the Celtics. But I don't think this deal is going to happen unless it's a 3-team deal. You can obviously see it says it right there. I think a 3-team deal, especially if Kemba's going somewhere else, definitely helps the Orlando Magic. Gary Harris is not on a good contract. Terrance Ross legitimately doesn't fit them at all. The Orlando Magic pretty much traded everybody at the deadline except for Terrance Ross. And I saw his tweet. He was like the only one left here, basically. So I think he definitely needs to find a new home this offseason. When I look at Kemba Walker's fit, if it ends up being Orlando, which I don't think makes sense for their timeline. You have Fultz there. It just really doesn't make sense whatsoever. I don't see Markelle Fultz or Kemba Walker playing the shooting guard position. I don't think they can be on the court together. But, decent value here. Honestly, if you are the Orlando Magic, if this is the deal you're getting back, Terrance Ross's time there. He obviously had some pretty shiny moments there in Orlando, but I just don't think he was ever going to be a shooting guard on a contending team. Gary Harris they ended up getting from the Denver Nuggets, obviously, And, he was probably just going to be there for 1 year, if we're being honest anyway. So you get Kemba, possibly could flip him to a third team at some point in time, or you could just make it a 3-team deal. What that third team would be, I don't really know off the top of my head. But, none of these trades are 3-team deals. I don't really think that we're going to be diving into that too much. I think it's a little bit too complicated, especially, everybody thinks they're a GM, especially on Twitter. You're not. I guarantee whatever 3-team deal you propose is going to look nothing like what a 3-team deal would look like, especially with NBA GMs doing it. So the Celtics would definitely have to include at least one first-round pick, potentially 2 for this to go through, in my opinion. Probably more like a first and a second-round pick. But again, the least amount of picks you can give up here to the Celtics is the best. So that's that deal. See you guys with the next one. So Kemba goes to Chi-Town and joins the Chicago Bulls, who are kind of looking like they're maybe trying to go all in right now. Obviously made the big trade for Nikola Vucevic at the trade deadline last season. Pairing him up to Zach LaVine looked pretty good at points in time. Other times, not so much. But the Bulls obviously didn't end up making the playoffs. I think if they had Kemba Walker, they definitely could. This isn't a situation like the Celtics. Yes, you have kind of a big 2 right now. You're 1A and you're kind of 1B there. This is a little bit different. You have a dominant center and you have a dominant guard. You don't have 2 wings, which I think Kemba definitely fits in a little bit better. Zach LaVine's an established shooting guard. We take a look at the value here. Kobe White would be the big piece of this deal. Obviously, he comes over to Boston, kind of matches up with the timeline a little bit more of Tatum and Brown. Obviously, Tatum and Brown are, kind of light years ahead of him talent-wise, but that being said, does, age-wise at least, kind of fits up with their, kind of getting into the best years of their career a little bit more than Kemba Walker definitely did, I would say. So along with that, you get Terrance back, who can probably fill in that point guard, maybe even shooting guard spot. I believe he's like 6'7", 6'8", almost, maybe 6'6". Whatever he is, he's a tall guard. So, he can kind of fit in there. Maybe could occasionally make a play or two. I don't think he would ever start for this team, but again, we'll bring in some good veteran depth on the bench. And then Al-Farouq Aminu, kind of same thing right there. Definitely can be a good potential 3-and-D guy, for the Celtics. And I honestly hope that they would keep him. I like Al-Farouq Aminu a lot, and I think definitely, veteran experience off the bench is one of the main things the Celtics are lacking this offseason. You get Kemba over there, and again, you're not giving up a ton. It's kind of a weird timeline for the Bulls right now. They kind of got a weird roster, especially you got young guys on that team like Patrick Williams, Kobe White, Lauri Markkanen even. And, you traded for Vucevic. LaVine's obviously not in the exact prime of his career yet, but he's getting there. I don't know if his timeline matches up exactly with those 3 young guys I just mentioned. So I wouldn't mind this trade at all if I were the Chicago Bulls. I think the Celtics probably have to go up maybe 1 first, maybe a second as well to get this done. But again, not bad value for either team. I actually don't mind this one as much as some of the other ones I mentioned so far. So this trade right here with the Portland Trail Blazers hinders on one thing and one thing only. That is if Damian Lillard does end up being traded. This trade right here sends Kemba Walker, Peyton Pritchard, and what I would imagine to be at least 2 first-round picks and maybe a pick swap to Portland for CJ McCollum. Now, obviously, Portland would not be doing this trade to get Kemba Walker. He would probably be there for maybe a year. I could see them doing something like Chris Paul did, previous to him joining the Phoenix Suns, where they have him for a year and then try to look to trade him. I think CJ McCollum would kind of bring that third aspect of scoring to the Celtics. Obviously, Kemba did that as well, but I kind of do like CJ's fit a little bit better. It doesn't have to be as ball dominant. Can definitely shoot the 3-point ball really well. I do, as I mentioned, like that fit there a little bit better. So for Portland, you're doing this. Obviously, you traded Damian Lillard if this trade's happening. You're going full rebuild mode. CJ McCollum does not match your timeline. You got a pretty nice young guard who can shoot the 3-ball in Peyton Pritchard. Not saying he's ever going to be your starting point guard on a championship contending team, but you at least get a little bit of youth there. Along with that, you're also probably going to get at least 3 first-round draft picks. So that's my take on that trade. We got another fun one coming with Portland right now. So this one might look a little bit weird on your screen right now. It says straight up Damian Lillard for Kemba Walker. It's actually 3 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. So you get into 3 first-round picks and then the pick swap options that kind of a similar thing to what the Brooklyn Nets and the Houston Rockets did with that James Harden trade. But if I'm the Portland Trailblazers here, I would not do this for a multitude of reasons. I think if you're going to trade Damian Lillard somewhere, I would probably trade him to a deal or to a team that you can get actually decently valuable picks from. If you take a look at a team, you look at the Paul George trade from a few years ago when the Oklahoma City Thunder did that with the LA Clippers. Obviously, they got a ton of picks and a ton of pick swaps. That being said, Kawhi Leonard was on a short-term deal at the time. He could legitimately leave this offseason. Those picks could become extremely valuable very, very quickly. If we do this deal, Damian Lillard has 5, or actually what would be 4 years left on his contract. Jason Tatum is just signed an extension last offseason. Jaylen Brown has a lot of years left on his contract. The Celtics aren't going to be really that bad that you're going to want those picks that badly anytime soon. So, if this is just a crazy idea, I saw it floated out by like a potential, source on Twitter that the Celtics could be candidates for Damian Lillard. I think if they actually want Dame, though, there's no way they're getting him without Jaylen Brown. I would be impressed as hell by Brad Stevens if they do this. But, honestly, if you can't find a trade that's good enough, I don't think, obviously, you're not going to get enough trades for Damian Lillard. I don't think that's going to be your problem. You're going to get a lot of trade offers if you're looking to trade Damian Lillard. But I wouldn't take this one if I was, running the Portland Trailblazers, especially because of how non-valuable I really don't think these picks are going to be. But it is the NBA. Anything can happen, but I really don't think this one's going to happen. And our final trade here for Kemba Walker, which really just doesn't make really any sense to me at all. I actually really don't think this one, and not that it's less likely than the Damian Lillard trade, but I just don't think this one's likely at all, is a trade from Kemba Walker to the Indiana Pacers for Malcolm Brogdon and Doug McDermott. Celtics would be giving up 2 first-round picks as well. For some reason on the ESPN trade machine, you cannot give up first-round picks, which just makes seemingly no sense to me, but that would be the deal for that. The Celtics had a chance of getting Malcolm Brogdon. They opted not to. They opted to go with Kemba Walker instead, which, at the time looked like a simple move. Obviously didn't work out. I think Kemba would find a new home on a team that does contend in the Eastern Conference, them being the Indiana Pacers. Obviously not contending, right now, but they've definitely been a team to watch out for before. Indiana obviously fired their head coach today, or actually yesterday at the time you're seeing this video. So they're looking for a new head coach. I think Kemba Walker can definitely be a good veteran presence on this team, obviously next to Domantas Sabonis, Miles Turner, TJ Warren, guys like that. So, it's Indiana kind of screams, middle of the pack to me. It's kind of a team right now that unless they make some crazy moves, not that this is one of those crazy moves, it's kind of stuck in like an NBA, kind of like the middle that, you're not bad, but you're just nobody thinks you're winning a championship anytime soon. So it does suck to see for the Pacers, but, I know they have a lot of internal problems there as well. I saw like assistant coaches and coaches would sometimes scream at each other on the sidelines in the middle of the games, and you just don't want that. Obviously getting rid of your head coach is, the kind of the first problem to solve that. But that being said, if they're looking to switch things up a little bit, value-wise for this one, if Kemba can stay healthy, I think he's probably a better option at times with Malcolm Brogdon. I think Brogdon's definitely the more complete player. I kind of like Kemba's fit a little bit more just because, you don't have a ton of guys in that team that at times can legitimately put up 25 points a game. I think Kemba could do that for you. That being said, I would prefer to have Brogdon still if I were the Indiana Pacers. That's why I don't think this one's realistic, especially because you also have to get rid of Doug McDermott, who's obviously a great contributor on your team, great three-point shooter. So I do not think this one will probably happen as well. So that wraps up our trades. So that kind of wraps up our first, non-rebuild video here on the channel. You guys can let me know your thoughts on it down below. Feel free to critique me on anything. I mean, you don't have to be an asshole about it, but if you want to be, it's fine. I was going back and forth on the face cam for this one. I think I'm going to put the face cam, kind of in a corner or somewhere of this video and just make it work because I know a lot of you guys do prefer when the face cam is on. But, if you guys don't want to see the face cam, if you guys prefer just to maybe see gameplay, and if I get copyright striked for gameplay, I'll probably just switch it to just pictures or something. But that being said, it's obviously not a finished, polished product whatsoever. This one's probably going to be a little more rough than, some of the rebuilds come out and stuff like that. Just because, again, I'm not really used to this style. I'm really not whatsoever. That being said, I think we came up with some pretty good moves here. I'm ready to talk. It doesn't just have to be trades we talk about, in this portion of the channel, non-rebuilds aspect. We can do, I saw people wanted to see tier lists. I saw people wanted to see all sorts of stuff resolving around the NBA. So we're obviously going to have to get more into this. It's going to be a lot better to do this kind of, once we do hit the NBA offseason, when the rumors start flying, everything goes like that. But that being said, I'm also not waiting until the offseason to kind of get these other videos kind of going on this channel. So if you guys have anything else you wanted me to talk about, feel free to let me know down below in the comment section. As always, my Twitter DMs are open if you want to shoot me a DM with, any advice, any critiques you do have, any video ideas as well. I'm always there. If you guys are new to the channel, you guys want to support me here, subscribe. It does help me out a ton. That being said, we're going to wrap up day one in the first video of, I guess, just our NBA talks. I'm going to find a more creative name. If any of you guys have more creative series names, feel free to leave those down below as well. So that does it for me. I seriously do thank you guys all so much for watching and supporting me. I love you guys. I'll see you guys on the next one.